it is Rent and Wreck back with you to review the latest pro wrestling news and results leading into WrestleMania weekend. It is wrestling! Rants, baby! Let's get into it! Another one of those retrospectives looking back at WrestleMania in Southern California. This is the fourth WrestleMania retrospective of this set. There is one more to go after this, WrestleMania 21, which I was at that WrestleMania, so that will be a very fun rant that we will be covering in our wrestling rants either tonight or around the corner tomorrow. So, one way or another, we're going to finish off this retrospective series of WrestleManias in Southern California, coming very soon, with the last one dropping WrestleMania 21. But, right now, what we're going to talk about is WrestleMania 2000, aka WrestleMania 16, from the same location as WrestleMania 12, the Anaheim Pond, also called, I believe it's now called the Honda Center. It may be called something different now, I'm not sure. It's gone in a few different iterations in the past, but at this time I think it was still known as the Anaheim Pond. April 2nd, 2000 was the date for this WrestleMania. I remember going into this WrestleMania, there was a lot of anticipation for a strong card because the product in general at this point in WWF was really running on all cylinders. We had a really good Royal Rumble. We had a really excellent No Way Out pay-per-view, which was highlighted by that Hell in a Cell retirement match with Mick Foley and Triple H. Just a lot of good components running on all cylinders in WWF at the time. Of course, Vince Russo was out. He was over in WCW. Things aligned pretty well creatively all throughout this year. And unfortunately, one of the only really sore thumbs creatively in the year of WWE 2000 was this show, believe it or not. WrestleMania 2000 was definitely a low point in the year of 2000 for WWF. This show there was a lot of stuff that had potential here that really didn't come to fruition. Obviously, the triangle ladder match with the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian, that's one thing that really delivered. There was maybe a few matches that delivered somewhat as well. The rest of the show felt an incredible amount of filler. There was just, it was just one of those really drab, dull, long in the tooth WrestleManias that had too many matches that didn't go anywhere, that didn't really mean much in the long term look of things creatively either. This was just not well put together, unfortunately, as the final output for this WrestleMania. Let's talk about the attendance. 19,776. That actually beat the previous WrestleMania Anaheim Pond WrestleMania 12 attendance, which was around 18,000 and some numbers. So this surpassed that, probably because they had quite a small stage area, so more people behind the stage could probably fill that area. That probably bumped it up to pushing 20,000 in attendance. Buy rate wise, 824,000 total buys. This was way, and I mean way up from the rut of WrestleMania 10 through about WrestleMania 13. The numbers started diving. WrestleMania 10 had about, I believe, recall looking back at these numbers the other day, about 420,000 buys. WrestleMania 11 had around 300 and some buys. We talked about WrestleMania 12 having, I think it was 290,000 buys on that one. WrestleMania 13 went even lower with about 230,000 buys. This one, 824,000. Boom. This was a trend for sure. WrestleMania 14 eclipsed. I think WrestleMania 14 got around 500. Don't quote me on that. The next year it rose again, and it just kept going higher and higher. as WWE just kept on rolling in this time frame, coming out of the Attitude Era a little bit and moving into around the time where WCW got sold the next year, and we move into that era a little bit. But a great number for sure on this one, 824,000 total buys, pushing near 1 million, which is at the time really a big benchmark for a lot of pay-per-views. They can reach that 1 million mark, which some WrestleManias did do. I know 23 was one of them, with Donald Trump and Vince McMahon, that whole business. That was one of the higher purchased WrestleManias in history. So this one competed pretty high up there too at 824K. The tagline for this WrestleMania was McMahon in every corner. We know the whole situation with that. 4 corners, 4-way elimination match for the main event. And there was a McMahon in every single corner. Foley had Linda McMahon. Shane McMahon was with Big Show. Triple H obviously had Stephanie McMahon. And Vince McMahon was with The Rock. This one, interesting little side note. Never, ever in commentary was there even a suggestion that this was WrestleMania 16. This was an edict brought down by Vince to never call it WrestleMania 16. We got to the point here right after 15 where Vince was starting to really pull back on the Roman numerals and calling them by a certain year or a certain, I guess, a certain number. This one got the year at WrestleMania 2000. Further on, WrestleMania 17, WrestleMania X7, a little play at the Roman numerals, things like that. We moved back to the Roman numerals for 19, for 20, 21, I believe. At least we were calling it WrestleMania 21. WrestleMania 22 as well. So really kind of a weird look back on how WWE, whatever you want to call it, presented the WrestleMania I guess taglines, or the WrestleMania number, I should say, on this one. This WrestleMania has the distinction of having only one single one-on-one match, and that match even had a gimmick to it. It was essentially like a battle royal match where whoever got thrown out of the ring first lost. That match was between Terry Reynolds and the Cat. We'll talk about that as we review each match. This was not a pretty match. But that holds the distinction of being the only one-on-one match on this card. Every other match had multi-man, it was a tag situation, a triple threat. We talked about we will talk about the Hardcore Battle Royal type of scramble match. 4-way match was the main event. Very, very unusual way that they booked this show. Another interesting little note I found in digging, this WrestleMania, I don't know if it still is, but for the longest time, believe it or not, it was banned in Ireland. This is so weird. I don't understand this. They cited extreme violence as the reason why the Irish government wanted to put a halt on this. Looking back, this show wasn't extremely violent, I didn't feel. There was certainly moments in the hardcore match, in the main event, in the triple threat triangle ladder match. There for sure was some extreme violence in those matches. Nothing out of the ordinary for the company. I actually took a look at this show more in terms of the adult content, in terms of not the violence, but the sexual stuff, the stuff with Kat. There was a segment with Mae Young and Stacey Carter in the back that was, I couldn't believe the nudity that they were teasing on that one. There was some stuff in the beginning of the show, which actually we'll talk about it. I got edited out as well, involving the entrance of the Godfather. So I thought in that essence, there was more adult content on a non-violent and more of just like nudity teasing, and the match with the Cat and the Terry Reynolds was just a complete strip show essentially as well. So kind of weird looking back how Ireland took umbrage with this event for some reason. Let's talk about another interesting little side item here that I found out. WWE was in negotiations trying to get the Tupac Shakur, Dr. Dre track, California Love, as the theme to WrestleMania 2000. As it were, the Tupac Shakur estate would not allow it. He had already passed away at this point, so the estate was handling everything related to his music and releasing music and giving props and giving opportunities to use his music. They absolutely declined it. So then what happened? Well, the song you're hearing right now is Jim Johnston's WrestleMania 2000 theme, which was supposed to be a play at California Love. You can kind of hear it a little bit in the beat and things like that, in the vibe of the song, that it was trying to be almost like a redux of California Love a little bit. This version is instrumental. It doesn't have the lyrics with it. But yeah, it was really interesting. I had never known that until I started digging a little bit about this, that essentially they tried to get a big time song, California Love, as the theme for WrestleMania 2000, and were denied. Absolutely denied. What else to mention? There was absolutely no Stone Cold Steve Austin on this WrestleMania, which I found incredibly bizarre, considering he was even shown on the WrestleMania broadcast from being at the Access Fan Fest doing autographs. Yet they couldn't have Austin appear on this show in any capacity. I guess they were waiting at the time for that big pop that Austin got the following month at Backlash in that Rock Triple H match. I guess that was the train of thought. Couldn't really find out what was the reason here, why Stone Cold Steve Austin was left off this broadcast, to not do a promo, to not do a run-in, to not do anything. It was just kind of weird looking back. Some interesting little facts also referring to the main event. Triple H was the first heel to go out of WrestleMania as champion or retain the championship. This is a first in wrestling and in WWF particularly. And I remember at the time I was shocked when Triple H went over in the main event. Fans were littering the ringside area as well. They were not happy with the end result of this main event. Triple H was also the third wrestler, babyface and heel, to retain at a WrestleMania. So at this point, not many people had done that. Usually WrestleMania was the big setup for the big title win, defeating another champion. At WrestleMania, usually it was a babyface. So things went a little bit different this run around for WrestleMania 2000. A few matches that were rumored to happen or in the planning stages that didn't go down or got changed. One of them was Kane against X-Pac, which was slated to be a cage match at WrestleMania 2000. What happened was Kane injured his, I believe it was his left hand, a couple weeks before the show. They scrambled and they came up with a different plan of action that was putting Kane in a tag with Rikishi against Road Dogg and X-Pac, which was pretty much a nothing match for the most part. So that was in the planning stages, supposed to happen on the show, a cage match with X-Pac and Kane to blow that feud off. They ultimately blew it off in that tag match anyway, but they just had to go about it a different way. Another thing I had read was that X-Pac was on some podcast of some sort, and he was quoted as saying that at some point in the planning stages of this WrestleMania, he was supposed to wrestle Chris Jericho for the Intercontinental title. Now that certainly didn't happen. When we got to WrestleMania, Kurt Angle was both Intercontinental and European champion. So obviously a change of plan there. Jericho had a few change of plans on this WrestleMania. He actually was originally slated and planned to be a part of the main event 4-way elimination match. He was going to be taking the place that went to Mick Foley. And there's promotional material all over for this WrestleMania, which showed Big Show, Rock, Triple H, and Jericho on top of a globe. That was because that was the original plan for this WrestleMania, was for those 4 competitors to square off in the main event. Why Jericho didn't get this opportunity was basically cold feet by Vince McMahon. He pulled away we kind of know the story now looking back. Vince kind of didn't believe in Jericho for a couple of years there until finally we got to that point. I think it was at the end of 2021, where as a payback, Jericho was given wins over Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin to claim that undisputed championship that he had until WrestleMania time the following year against Triple H at WrestleMania 18. So that was a very interesting point there that I did not know until I started digging on this. Also, Mick Foley was very hesitant to take that spot that Jericho was originally planned for a couple of reasons. Obviously, because he didn't want Jericho to lose that spot. And he just wasn't confident in the booking of things, especially since he felt like he went out in a strong way, putting over Triple H twice over at both Rumble and at No Way Out, and effectively retiring. He didn't want to bastardize his retirement stipulation as well, but he was talked into it, and he finally agreed to it because, in his words, he did not want to hurt Vince's feelings. So there you go on that. That's really about it for all the little facts and figures about WrestleMania. Let's get into a little bit about what ended up being the pre-show, which was an hour of Sunday Night Heat, the old WWF show that preceded a lot of pay-per-views and then also aired every Sunday night as well. There really wasn't much to note on Sunday Night Heat. It was mostly video package. There was no matches beforehand for this WrestleMania. No dark matches, nothing like that. No pre-show matches. But we did have a few angles on Sunday Night Heat. Kurt Angle and Bob Backlund got into it. Angle kind of attacked Bob Backlund. Hardy Boys were also attacked by Edge and Christian to kind of just build that last-minute heat to the match that was happening later on the show. Pete Rose also did an interview, basically making it very clear that he was going to be a part of his third WrestleMania, trying to get one up on Kane, and we know how that went. So let's get into the actual pay-per-view. One thing to note, I'm just going to talk about my personal experience on this pay-per-view. I watched it from home. I was living north of where I'm at now. I was going to college up in the northern part of Minnesota. Like I said, I was really amped for this show, and I purchased the full WrestleMania package deal, which also included an 8-hour pre-show. 8 hours! Which basically was a best of WrestleMania. It showcased and spotlighted every single WrestleMania, all 15 of them prior to this one. It basically recapped them, showed the best matches from each WrestleMania, etc. There was some interviews in between a lot of the spotlights on each WrestleMania. They were, I believe, showing footage from Access. I think, if I recall, they were even at Access live on this pre-show. But yeah, 8-hour pre-show. This was the first and the last time WWF ever did that. So now let's get into the actual pay-per-view of WrestleMania 2000. Kicking off WrestleMania was Lillian Garcia with America the Beautiful. We're moving to the always awesome video package leading into the start of WrestleMania. We get into the first match. Already, first match in, we get an edit. Here. Ice-T came out with The Godfather, and I remember this when I watched this live. There was a bit of an explicitness to the lyrics, I believe, by Ice-T. Because of that, basically when this went up on at least Peacock, I don't know about the WWE Network version, but when it went up on Peacock, this was edited completely out. The entrance was completely edited. We just basically start the match with just Bossman and Buchanan doing their entrance, and we didn't get the other entrance from The Godfather and D'Lo. So that was your opening match. Bull Buchanan and the Big Boss Man over The Godfather with the hose and D'Lo Brown. 9 minutes, 8 seconds of work. This was not a hot opener by any stretch of the imagination, particularly that the heels went over. This was not a strong way to start this show. I went 2 stars. That might even be generous on this one. Did not care for this match much at all to open up the show. Have a quick segment in the back with Stephanie and Triple H just kind of strategizing and starting to hint a little bit that Triple H had a game plan here, and we all know what that was now looking back. It was Vince McMahon kind of turning on the Rock and costing him the match and helping Triple H win and retain that WWE Championship in the main event. Then we get into match number 2, which was a absolute mess, including a finish that was fucked up, that was not done correctly. This was Hardcore Holly winning the Hardcore Scramble match. I don't know exactly what they called this. I think it was a Hardcore Invitational or something like that. But he won the Hardcore title, but he was not supposed to win it. So let's explain what I'm talking about here. First off, let's talk about all of the different pinfall finishes in this match. There was 10 different pinfalls because it was a 15-minute scramble, and whoever had the title by the end of it won. Now, the trick of it is if somebody beat, for instance, Crash Holly got beat at the outset of this match because he was the Hardcore Champion going into it, then whoever beat him had to be pinned by somebody else to get that title, and it keep going on and on in the 15-minute period. So these were all the falls. 25 seconds in, Taz pinned Crash Holly really quick. Then a minute in, they already stick it to Taz, and Big Viscera pins Taz 1 minute into this match. I remember watching this live. I was a big ECW fan. I was blown away. Then they didn't do a pinfall for a while. Finally, Funaki pinned Viscera at 7 minutes. 8 minutes in, Rodney of the Mean Street Posse pins Funaki. 8.5 minutes, Joey Abs pins Rodney, both Mean Street Posse people. 9 minutes in, Thrasher the Headbangers pinned Joey Abs. 9.5 minutes, this is all shit happening in the backstage. 9.5 minutes, Pete Gas over Thrasher. 10 minutes, they start going back into the ringside area. Taz beats Pete Gas, who was fucking bloody as fuck. 14.5 minutes, Crash Holly pins Taz. Taz kicks out at 2. They count the fall. Don't ask me what the fuck was up with that. Then, with only about a half a minute left, up until the time limit, Taz looks to be having a chokeout win on Crash Holly to get that belt back. Hardcore Holly comes in with a candy dish or a candy jar of some sort, blasts Taz with it, tries to go for the pin. This wasn't supposed to happen. Hardcore Holly was supposed to have a 2 count and the bell was going to ring. Tim White, the official who's going into the Hall of Fame this year, God bless his soul, he's not alive anymore, but he fucked up royally on this finish. He did the 1, the 2, the bell didn't ring yet, and then he had to act like he stopped or fucked up and didn't get that count of 3, even though clearly there was still time left. Got chastised in the back, was the word. I had read about that as well. But basically what the idea here was Hardcore Holly was supposed to almost get that Hardcore title, but didn't get it quite just at the last second. Thus Crash Holly would have retained. But they had to improvise, and sure enough, they announced that Hardcore Holly was the Hardcore Championship. They showed replays of this afterwards, and it didn't help it at all, because it looked absolutely terrible in execution. Match number 3. We're only at match number 3. TNA over Head Cheese. Highlight really wasn't the match, but before the match, there was just a close-up cleavage spot of Trish Stratus walking in the halls. I like it. I like it a lot. 7 minutes, 4 seconds in this one. This was garbage. I gave it a 1 3/4 stars. It was just not good. All these thrown together tags were under average for sure. The real thing on this one was the Chester McCheesington character at ringside getting assaulted as well by Al Snow and Steve Blackman. Then we get in the back, and this is the segment I was talking about earlier with the Cat and Mae Young. And the nudity teasing in this one was unbelievable. I'm shocked that they were able to do this, but it's pay-per-view, I guess, is what it is. And if you recall, the Cat actually exposed herself completely and showed her tits on one other paper. I think it was Armageddon, 1999. So at this point, we are really struggling on this show. But then comes the triangle ladder match with Edge and Christian, the Dudleys, the Hardys. What a match. This kicked off a wonderfully awesome rivalry that spanned many pay-per-views with these teams against each other in TLC, etc. Great match. What else can you say? This saved the show. At 23 minutes and 30 seconds, they gave it plenty of time. I went 4.5 stars on that one. Just a phenomenal match that he definitely competed or maybe even eclipsed the quality of Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 10. Then we get into this fucking cat fight for match number 5. Terry Runnels over the cat by count out or by throwing her out of the ring, I guess basically was what the gimmick was. So it wasn't technically a count out, it was by throwing her over, or not even over the top, but just through the ropes. Val Venus was a ref. He was making out with both of them. Mae Young was seconding the cat. Fabio Smoother was seconding Terry Runnels. They were getting into it. This was just such a fucking mess. I went a half of a star just because there was some good TNA action a little bit. Terry Runnels was basically wearing next to nothing, a thong and like a see-through kind of mesh kind of thing. The cat was basically in a thong and a bra. I mean, it was what it was, but what it was not a good match, that's for sure. We get to match number 6. Chyna and Too Cool in a 6-person tag over Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, the Radicals. 9:38 a time. I went 2.5 stars. This was a perfectly average match. All these matches, too, just felt like they could have been on a Raw, you know? Chyna pinned Eddie Guerrero. This kicked off a little bit more of a storyline between those two as the year progressed, and a pretty good storyline at that. Here's one match that I thought was going to deliver so much, and I was so disappointed at the execution of it. That was the 2-fall triple threat match for both the Intercontinental in 1 fall and the European Championship in another fall. Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle. Absolute disappointment. This match just did not flow well. The action wasn't just in a nice, coherent manner. I gave it an appreciative 3.5 stars because they all were really trying their best, but whoever laid this match out, yikes. First fall, Benoit pinned Jericho, the top rope headbutt. Second fall, Jericho pinned Benoit with, I believe, was the moonsault or something along those lines. Springboard moonsault. So Benoit gets the Intercontinental Championship. Jericho gets the European Championship, and Kurt Angle is never pinned for each. So there is your story there. Again, disappointing match for sure. Could have been and should have been so much more better. Then we go to match 8. 4 minutes. This was rushed. I gave it 2 stars because they were trying to get everything in as they could. Kane and Rikishi over X-Pac and Road Dogg. This was the basically the blow off of the X-Pac Kane thing. Afterwards, things transitioned to Too Cool and Rikishi doing their dance. The San Diego Chicken came out, who you recall at one WrestleMania was Pete Rose. Kane standing in the ring thinking this is Pete Rose doing this. It wasn't Pete Rose. It was basically a swerve. It was the real San Diego Chicken in the costume. Kane went for him. Pete Rose tried to attack Kane with a bat. Subsequently, didn't work out. Pete Rose got attacked and laid out again by Kane. 3 strikes and you're out, Pete Rose, on this one. Then main event time. 38 minutes of a fatal 4-way elimination match. Triple H retained the championship. The crowd was going nuts, and not in a good way at that finish. Vince McMahon turned on The Rock to lay out The Rock with 2 chair shots for the finish. Prior to that, Rock got a rock bottom over Big Show to eliminate him, and Triple H pedigreed Foley on a steel chair to eliminate Mick Foley as well. The crowd just deflated after Foley left. Ultimately, they were banking on Foley getting his big win finally for, kind of to make up for the fact that he had to retire. I thought that was going to happen as well. I thought Foley would get the championship and to kind of retire being WWE champion, but it just didn't happen. Like I said, the crowd was not feeling it. Even after Rock Um, Ended up getting into it a little bit and rock bottoming Stephanie McMahon. I still really didn't send the fans home happy. This was a definite what the fuck on top of quite a what the fuck WrestleMania for sure. I'll be generous. I'll say a C to a C plus on this one. If it wasn't for that ladder match, this show would have been probably one of the worst WrestleManias in history. Okay, everybody, come on back. We got one more retrospective to go. That's WrestleMania 21. So come on back right here, Wrestling Rants.